They claim Russia invaded Ukraine because NATO was moving closer, but that was never the real reason. The truth runs much deeper and much darker. For Russia, security doesn't mean a buffer state. It means an empire, a territory so vast that no rival could ever threaten its core. And here's the chilling reality. In Moscow's strategic mindset, safety requires control over a population at least twice its own. That logic demands relentless expansion, one that would consume dozens of nations and permanently redraw the map of Europe.
So one of the narratives that was going around was that the reason why Russia was pushing into Ukraine is because NATO was moving their arms closer to the border of Russia.
There is something to be said for that. You just have to put it into context to really understand it. So the Russian point of view is for us to be secure, we need to expand until we reach a point where invaders cannot overwhelm us. We have to be able to plug those access points. But to give the Russians what they want, you have to sign over the future of Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, Finland, the Czech Republic, Hungary, Slovakia, Romania, Belarus, Ukraine. Oh, let's go on. Azerbaijan, Armenia, Georgia, Kazakhstan, all the stands. Basically, the Russians, in order to feel safe, they have to be able to occupy total populations that are twice of their own. And I'm sorry, but that's just not feasible. So, technically, the people who claim that NATO provoked this are correct. NATO can't have what it wants in Russia in order for Russia to feel safe. But for Russia to feel safe, they've got to occupy over 180 million people. And that was never part of the game.
Zeihan makes a chilling point. Russia's concept of security isn't about borders. It's about domination. Its strategy depends on controlling vast buffers of countries and populations far beyond what is realistic or sustainable. That's why the claim that NATO provoked Russia is only half true. Even if NATO stopped expanding tomorrow, Russia still wouldn't feel secure. Its system demands expansion to feel safe. This means the real conflict isn't just about Ukraine. It's about whether Russia can ever be satisfied at all. Zeihan lays bare the terrifying logic behind the invasion. In Moscow's worldview, security means absorbing entire countries. He doesn't say, what if you want to say out loud, is that Russia isn't just fighting a war. It's losing a war of logistics, equipment, and reality itself. And the evidence is brutal. When a supposed superpower is forced to rely on weapons built decades ago, long past their expiration date, that isn't resilience. It's collapse. At the height of the Soviet Union, Russia produced enormous quantities of military equipment, all designed for a climactic war with the United States that never came. The grim irony is that those stockpiles, once symbols of power, are now being dragged out of storage by a much weaker successor state. Soviet planners never imagined their descendants would still be using this equipment generations later, well beyond its intended lifespan. Yet that is exactly what Russia is doing, and it's paying the price. As modern reserves have been destroyed, Moscow has been forced to deploy decaying Soviet-era armor. Nowhere is this clearer than in its tank and armored vehicle fleet. On January 24th, journalist David Axe, writing for Euromaidan Press, noted that Russia has technically replaced all of its armored vehicle losses once. But those replacements came almost entirely from aging Soviet stockpiles. And those reserves are now gone, burned through just as quickly as the armor sent into Ukraine, with weaker, older vehicles now filling the front lines. It's only a matter of time before Russia is left with nothing but empty storage yards and scrap air above cracked tarmac to replace whatever Ukraine destroys next. At the outset of the invasion, it all seemed to favor Moscow. When Putin launched his so-called special military operation, Russia enjoyed a massive numerical advantage. Across infantry fighting vehicles, IFVs, and armored personnel carriers, APCs, Russia entered Ukraine with a combined total of roughly 13,842 vehicles. On paper, that should have been more than enough, especially given the Kremlin's assumption that Ukraine would fight an attritional war on Russia's terms. That assumption was catastrophic. Ukraine adopted an asymmetric strategy that made Russian armor increasingly difficult to use and increasingly easy to destroy. Still, for the first years of the war, Putin doubled down. Send waves of tanks, IFVs, and APCs, and Ukraine's defenses would eventually collapse. Instead, Russia's armor stockpile has gone up in smoke. Today, it no longer has the depth to replace what Ukraine takes out. Even the conservative numbers are devastating. According to Oryx, which tracks only visually confirmed losses, Russia has lost 4,038 tanks and 8,735 AFVs and IFVs. Nearly 9,000 confirmed losses in these categories amount to roughly two-thirds of the entire fleet Russia committed to the initial invasion, and that's just what can be proven with photos or video. Those figures alone are grim. Ukraine's estimates are far worse. Ukraine's Ministry of Finance reports Russian tank losses at 11,165 as of January 25th, with total armored vehicle losses reaching 23,950. Even if the true numbers fall somewhere between these two estimates, the conclusion doesn't change. Russia is bleeding armor at a rate it cannot sustain. The deeper problem is that the Soviet-era stockpiles Russia relied on to mask these losses have now run dry. Czech military analyst Jakub Janovsky has pointed out that while Russia's active IFE and APC numbers today are roughly comparable to early 2022 levels, that stability exists only because reserves were gutted to keep them there. Annual confirmed losses now run around 2,400 vehicles, while production sits closer to 900. That leaves a shortfall of roughly 1,500 vehicles per year, one that can no longer be filled from storage. Axe breaks this down further. Russia is producing about 400 to 500 BMP, 3 tracked IFEs, and a similar number of BTR, 82-wheeled APCs annually. Optimistically, that's around 1,000 vehicles per year, and realistically closer to 900. Meanwhile, Russia has confirmed losses of 3,600 BMP, 1 in BMP, 2 IFVs from the 1960s and 1970s, 2,150 MTLB tracked APCs from the same era, 1,900 BTR 82s, 890 BMP 3s, and around 700 airborne BMD vehicles. The stockpile situation is even worse. In 2022, Russia had roughly 4,900 usable BMP, 1 in BMP, 2 vehicles in storage. Today, that number has collapsed to around 1,110. MTLBs have dropped from 3,600 to just 530. There are no BTR-82s left in storage at all. Only 120 to 460 BMDs Russia started the war with remain usable. The key word here is usable. Russia still has thousands of vehicles sitting in depots, but most are so badly degraded that they're only good for spare parts. Restoring them would cost more than building new ones, and Russia has already shown it lacks the industrial capacity to do that at scale. Add it all up, and the picture is stark. Russia has roughly 1,800 usable IFEs and APCs left in storage, many of which still require repairs. That's a one-time resource. Once it's gone, it's gone. Meanwhile, Russia is losing between 2,250 and nearly 6,000 armored vehicles per year, depending on whose figures you trust. The math simply doesn't work. Even if Russia empties every remaining storage yard, it has about 1 year of IFE and APC replacements left. After that, the number of armored vehicles on the battlefield will start falling sharply, directly limiting how much territory Russia can seize or even hold. And the same collapse is unfolding in Russia's tank fleet. Oryx confirms over 4,000 tank losses. Ukraine claims more than 11,000. By late 2025, Ukrainian reporting indicated Russia had exhausted its usable tank stockpiles, leaving perhaps 3,000 hulls that could theoretically be restored. Axe suggests the number of usable tanks may be closer to just 1,030. Production doesn't come close to compensating. Russia builds roughly 250 T-90M tanks and about 150 T-80 BVMs per year, nowhere near enough to offset ongoing losses, especially when those tanks face a battlefield saturated with Ukrainian drones. No matter how you slice it, Russia's armor isn't just under pressure, it's collapsing.